Good evening, lords and ladies. DJ Craigie with my amazing co-host, Infernal Ming Chow Clementine Wu, here with a special edition of our Behind the Fang podcast with our beloved source. It is a true honor to have you here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm kind of pleased to be here.
Thanks for honoring us and the community with your presence.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm really, like I said, really happy to be here. You guys are doing a great job with the podcast. And, I'm pleased with your work. It's very cool.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Yes, a true honor. We're both learning, and it's been a really, really awesome learning experience. So.
It's a fantastic experience. We're very proud, excited to carry on the podcast.
That's very cool. Yeah, I actually recorded, I think the first was 4 episodes of this show, and I myself ran into a great deal of difficulty just getting people to commit to do guest spots on the show. Either they didn't want to do their voice or they had scheduling. We've talked about this briefly behind the scenes, and it was a major challenge. So you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you so much.
Definitely, and we're trying to get reach out to everybody in the community and trying to get as many of our beloved characters to come out and just be part of it. And it really gets, because a lot of the people they miss all the backstories or they don't read the wiki, and it can just be really informing.
The high profile characters, the low profile, the different races, lycanthrope, vampire, we like to do current events, all of it.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great source for information, and I think the main progeny website has been down for a while. It is on my list of things to do to fix, but there are many other things with a higher priority on my plate. So,
of course, yeah, we understand.
You guys are providing a great service to our community.
Well, thank you so much. We're honored.
The true honor right there. And so, yeah, let us begin.
Dive right into it.
Alrighty.
Okay, question 1. How did you come up with the concept for this amazing HUD-based role-playing ecosystem here in the Second Life virtual world? And so it must have been just about 10 years ago now or so, since we're celebrating 10 years of Progeny Vampire.
Yeah, it seems like it has been around 10 years. My oldest son he just turned 15. So the system itself probably got started around 12 years ago, but the system as a release, with actual people playing it, it's probably been about 10 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So to answer your question, I have a long history of role play. I've started role playing with Dungeons and Dragons, the basic set, before AD&D, before second edition, before it was the original Dungeons and Dragons box set. And I played that back in high school. And I have been involved in various forms of role play ever since. I did Role Master and Fantasy Hero and Champions and Traveler and many, many other forms of role play. And when I got involved in Second Life, my first endeavor was really creating sort of a rental sim that was themed with vampire sort of stylings, because I've always been into vampires ever since reading Anne Rice's The Vampire Interview with a Vampire, like way back in the late 80s. Actually, here, side note here. When I was into the Vampire Lestat and Louis and all of that, I was a member of the Anne Rice fan club, and I actually went to New Orleans for the Halloween party the year before the movie came out, and then the year of the Memnock Ball. And those are 2 of my most favorite memories of all time. It was very, very cool. So anyway, back to the story. I got involved in doing sort of a landscapey rental sim thing. And through that process, I got involved in playing Bloodlines. And I thought Bloodlines was a really cool idea. And it was very similar to Vampire the Masquerade, I think by design. Mm-hmm. But I got annoyed with several factors. I think the first factor was the leader of the clan that I was in was kind of a jerk, and he was really mean to the queen of the clan, who was kind of nice to me when I first joined. So that was sort of an emotional turmoil upset kind of thing that made me want to start my own group. But then I got annoyed with the fact that in Bloodlines, I always felt like Mars had his hand in my pocket. It's always about making money and buying blood.
Yes.
He kept making it harder and harder to feed without buying blood. And that, for me, that was a source of pride, going around and being able to feed and, do the social activities that were involved with being a vampire. And eventually I just got fed up with it and quit. And I joined a game after that called Hunger. But after the experiences I had with that previous clan, I swore I would never be another person's follower again. And I met the owner of that system and paid like 50,000 lindens or something like that for a pure blood tag before I even joined the game, because I wanted to be my own thing, and joined the game and hated it, because the whole concept of that game was you see another vampire, you try to be the first person to kill the other one. And that completely removed the social factor to being a vampire, which I always thought was the best thing. So that's when I decided to start my own vampire system. And I set as a goal for myself that, one, you would never have to pay anything if you didn't want to. It would be free to get the HUD. You don't have to pay for every one of your new friends that you want to join so that they can be part of your family. You just embrace them and they get the HUD. Two, you would never have to beg to bite somebody. That was a major thing. And three, I wanted it to be a realistic simulation of being a vampire in the context of Second Life. And because I'm a software engineer by profession, it was pretty easy to get started, and it's been an ongoing process ever since. So that's kind of where the system came from. And if you want to know inspirationally, Progeny is based on several things. It's based on Interview with a Vampire and the Anne Rice mythology. It is based on Vampire the Masquerade, the original role-playing game. It's based on a book called The Awakening, which is a story about a vampire named Benjamin Latin who is dug up at a crossroads and has all these sort of interesting adventures. And a movie I saw when I was a teenager called My Best Friend is a Vampire. So I took elements from all of those sources to make what became the original version of Progeny.
It's incredible. Yes.
And I
we are so grateful that you did.
The one thing that drew me into it the most was because I love vampire roleplay, and I was actually exploring about 4 years ago now, and the fact that a vampire could bite a human, without like asking them, excuse me, do you mind if I have a nibble? That's just, I fell in love right away. I was like, well, then that's how it really is. I mean, that's
absolutely. And I don't want to get off topic, but I'll share a little bit of interesting facts here with you on that topic. Is, like I said, I felt like, being a Bloodlines vampire, I was basically a vampire panhandler, running around. Can I bite you, please? Please, I need to make my blood quota.
Yeah.
Right. And so I swore in Progeny, vampires should not have to ask permission to bite somebody. But I also wanted it to be very much like a live action LARP of Vampire the Masquerade. All the other people in the bar where you're playing are NPCs. They're not in the game. They're not even aware of the game. So Progeny should be transparent to other players, right? And I designed it that way. So it's easy to feed. You don't have to ask. You're not bothering anybody with bite requests and all that sort of thing. And it should be transparent to non-players. But of course, within the first day of my launching the first beta HUD, I was getting complaints from people that you have people biting me without my permission. And, it's like I've been raped. And I'm like,
oh my God.
And I 10 years, I get constant emails and messages of that nature. And I always say the same little analogy is, imagine you're at a fancy cocktail party with a bunch of really cool people, and you're sitting there sipping a martini and having a fascinating chat with somebody, and some idiot in a black t-shirt that says "I'm a vampire" walks up and says, "I just bit you, you're dead." Do you call the police and claim you've been assaulted? No, you just laugh at the idiot with your friend and walk away. And that's what it should be like for non-participants. Mm-hmm. Within the context of progeny, there is a story there. And yes, that person might be a shade now or whatever, but it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't actually hurt their avatar. It only hurts them if you're in the system. And right. That's why I have never cared about those kind of complaints. I figure, if they're worried about the fact that, their character being there without permission is part of some other story, it's really just a number to progeny. We don't care about them. We're not tracking them or anything like that. It's simply a point in an ongoing LARP. And if you actually want to join the system at some time and you find out you're dead, it's very easy to get brought back to life. And if you don't want to be in the system, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's not important.
Exactly. The funny part about it, I remember reading when I first started on progeny, and it said those exact words. It's like we're being raped, and it's like, well, no, first of all, it's nothing like that, and second of all, affect you in any manner unless, like you said, you are part of the system.
Yeah, rape, assault, those things are serious issues, and they do not deserve to be made light of by having something like what progeny is be analogous. It is not the same thing, and I'm not making light of those situations in real life, but in the context of Second Life, in the context of what progeny is, it's really just a game of tag. Functionally speaking, if you're not in the game. If you are in the game, it's a role play with context, and it does have meaning, and it should have meaning, but it's not in any way, shape, or form what these people are saying.
No.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
Another little side note on that last bit is we have about once every year or two throughout the course of progeny had somebody get up on a big soapbox and start screaming about the evils of progeny and the evils of the source, Lachiel, or even calling me by name, Robert, and just going on and on with a smear campaign against us. And you know what happens every single time? We get a massive uptick in population.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Makes it more appealing, more forbidden, right?
Yeah, I've actually sent thank you notes to a couple of the people that ran against me.
Well, and it's like they say, any publicity is good publicity, and especially if it's, I guess you would say, unfounded, as they would put it. When people find out that, wow, this is an awesome game.
Well, is it really a game? Progeny's more of a community and a role-playing simulation than actually being... Well, anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But, yeah, you're right. It's, it gets the word out there. And I think we have a massive, vibrant community. It's worth being a part of if you like vampire lore.
Oh, definitely. And
I agree.
Some of us, enemies or not, I've met some amazing friends that I never would have met otherwise, and it's just like a great community. It's the first thing I love to read with my coffee in the morning.
Yep.
So
they're making you famous every time they complain.
True. Was Howard Stern said, "Love me or hate me, just spell my name correctly."
That's right. That's so perfect.
Just make sure you say it right. So what are your thoughts on how the player base and role playing have evolved throughout the history since, for example, I'm only, we'll say 3-4 years into it.
Mm-hmm.
And being since the very beginning, What are your thoughts? What have you observed? Like,
Well, progeny, the community side of it, like I said, is the best element of progeny is the ongoing organic development of the community. And it has evolved both socially and constructually since the beginning. And often I get people coming to me saying that, oh, it's gone off the rails or it's nothing like your original vision intended. But generally speaking, everything has evolved in line with my original intention. That is to make people feel like real vampires in a real world inside of Second Life. And when I started out, this is an interesting thing. We asked about the origin of the system and the origin of my thoughts. And I intended originally to be a vampire like everybody else. But it was like on day one that I realized that I had too much power and I could no longer be just a vampire because I could do anything I wanted because I had access to the database and the API. And that's kind of where I ended up becoming the source or a devil. And, I created the first arch vampires. And from there, I created the clans. And then from the clans, we created the houses. And originally there was only supposed to be like 6 arch vampires and 12 clans. And that was it.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I swore I would never make more. But, as the community grew, I think the first thing that caused me to want to make more, well, actually the first thing that caused me to want to make more arch vampires was we had one leave or one I had to get rid of. And I ended up transferring the ownership of that bloodline to somebody else. And then once that door was open, there became more and more reasons. And we then grew a Spanish community, and I wanted to appoint somebody to be an arch vampire that was a native Spanish speaker to give the Spanish players more input into the system. Because back then, the arch vampires were my primary counsel on what's good for the community with regards to development.
mm-hmm.
And then later, that role sort of shifted to where the arch vampires are like the ancient wizened elders of the vampire community in general. Clan lords are sovereign nation states, and then houses are either nation states, city states, or enclaves within those nations. And it's just grown far beyond what I ever originally expected it could be. So yeah, it's definitely become more than I expected, but it's definitely still in line with what I envisioned. Because if you watch or read any of the minutes, notes from any of the council meetings or any of the old forum posts, our ongoing history reads like something out of the UN or any nation state in history you've ever heard of. There's real interesting political drama going on all the time. And I do whatever I can to provide more access to that level of role play to more people. That's why I keep adding new interesting roles, such as the advocate's office or the marshals and the scribes guild, which was actually started by Domino and Katrina. But we expand those roles to give more people who are interested in getting involved at a higher level access to that level of role play and interaction.
That's fantastic.
And that's like as to be expected. As you said, it grew so fast that, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, because once there could only be so many people, like in one clan.
Yep. Well, no, there's no limit to the size of a clan, but one of the struggles I had early on was, I envisioned the world of vampires to be a blood tree, right? You have a handful of arch vampires, a handful of first generations under them, and a handful of second generations under those. And then it grows and grows out like a family tree, right? Mm-hmm. And then the first year or two, they all look more like blood plates. You've got the arch vampire, then everybody's a generation one. And I had to find ways to encourage the diversification of those generations, and that's where potency came from, and the fact that it costs more. The more vampires you make, the more it costs to make for potency to embrace them, and that encouraged the original split to where you ended up getting more and more second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 8 generations down, because it's now more economical to create them. And eventually it became a point that, to get embraced by a higher generation is a much higher status symbol, and you need to work towards that. So people tend to get naturally embraced at a more realistic generation.
And that's actually a funny thing, because a lot of, like, I've even had people ask me, well, I want to be a generation 1. And it's like, well, you got a long way to go for that. I mean, they want that small number, right? They see
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, everyone wants to be the best they can get. And there's nothing system rules wise that says they can't. You're just going to have to find a generation that, to be a Gen 1, you need to find an arch vampire willing to embrace you. And mostly these days, they're not, especially since resire is actually possible now. That you can start out and say, nope, you need to go to a lower generation and prove your worth. And I think that makes sense. But there's nobody telling the arch vampires they have to do that.
And I agree with what you said right there. Like, if you want an arch vampire to make you a generation 1, well, you prove yourself to that arch vampire. Make them want to.
Exactly.
Work for it. Prove your worth. To the next question. So, when you first created Progeny Vampire, did you have a role-play character and a backstory that you used? And could you tell us the origins of your name then?
Sure. Okay, so the start of the question is, did I have a character? My first avatar in Second Life was named Dirk Naglo. He was just my first avatar that I built, and I didn't give any thought to his name. I kind of liked it because it was similar to like Dirk Gently, and I was a big Douglas Adams fan for a while. But Dirk was more involved in like the Gorian roleplay community, and had I kind of liked those books growing up, and I got involved in that community first in Second Life, and had some fun hanging out with people and learning about that subculture. And I found it interesting, but when I decided to go in the vampire direction and get involved in Bloodlines, I created Lachiel as my character for that, because I wanted to keep those two aspects of my personality distinct and separate. So Lachiel was actually named kind of after two separate things. And the Harry Dresden books, there is Lasher or Lachiel, but it's a different spelling. And Lachiel is a female demon of sort of like vengeance and vice and all that. And she's a knowledge base. And I love that character in the Harry Dresden series. And he's also named after Anne Rice's Lasher, which is like a sort of a violent, ill-tempered spirit. And then the third aspect to it is, Lachiel to be frank, I had a cat. I actually had several cats, and I named them all after angels or fictitious angels. And the EL part of Lachiel, of course, is the angelic suffix. And that's kind of part of what led to the concept of the source being a devil and a fallen angel is, his name was originally sort of a fallen angel's name, although I did not give him that for that reason. It's that he had that led me to the idea of the source being a devil. And the source as a title was borrowed from Charmed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I like that. I like that concept in that TV show. So
I do too. I love that show.
And to bring it around full circle, like I said, I already had Lachiel as a vampire character, and then when I created Progeny, I very quickly realized I could not play at the same level as everybody else because it just gave me too much power. The only way I could do it is to remain above and apart and set myself up as the source. And I was originally going to be the only devil, but then eventually I needed more help and had people that just simply shined with regards to the level of devotion that they were putting into the system, superdexing Terrace Newell and Oberon, being the original three. And there's also a guy named Saint, who donated the original progeny sim, and became one of our Diabolics. We had a bit of a kerfuffle a number of years ago, and several of them left, and Oberon remains. It has been my most loyal supporter ever since, and that is why he is now my Apiron and my right hand.
Very cool. That's amazing.
Well,
And
The
I must say,
expansion of it, the evolution, it's amazing. Watch it grow like that.
any of our fine Diabolics, I must say, they all do shine very brightly in the
yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, originally all of the arch vampires were handpicked by myself, but that kind of ceased to be a handful of years ago, where we started having arch vampires abdicate and their blood regents stepping up to become full arch vampires. It is still to this day, all Diabolics are chosen by me. So every one of my team is there because they have done something that just outshines anything anyone else has done with regards to, supporting the ongoing evolution of the system, either helping me with development or helping me with supporting the community, just doing things in general that have gotten them noticed, either by me or someone else, and then brought to my attention as, hey, this person is an ideal candidate for the next, Diabolic position, etc.
Yeah, and significant work like that deserves a significant recognition. So
Yeah.
Yep. And these people are my family, so I'm very, very happy to have them with me on the Diabolic team. Now, I do not participate as much as I'd like in the Diabolic discussion, but that's by design. I like the fact now I'm actually getting a lot more done by turning a lot of the day-to-day administration over to Oberon and letting him deal with all of the day-to-day vampire-related and community-related management, and then I can focus mostly on, development of new features and fixing broken features and things like that. But I still get pulled in whenever there's something major that needs to be discussed, or there's, a major design shift that they want to do with regards to how they're managing the community, things like that.
No, definitely, and there, it needs the thumbs up, of course, and
There's so much work to be done with such a large player base. I would imagine.
And I'm one developer doing all of the programming stuff. So,
well, you do an amazing job. We're very grateful for you.
I could have more done.
Developing by yourself is...
Yeah, developing by myself while I have a more than full-time job and a full-time family with a wife and 2 kids that, also need my time. So, it's busy, but I have been getting more done, and that's largely thanks to the COLs coming along. So,
wow, it just goes to show it's not all fun and games, right?
Yep, that's true.
So
people they don't realize, they just get their head off the altar and that's it. They don't see the how much work goes into it.
Yeah, and
on
I
the
tell you what,
backside and from the creator.
Yeah. Progeny is an extremely complicated animal from a design standpoint. You've got Linden scripting language in all of the scripted objects in world. Then you've got the database, which is the heart and soul of the system, which exists on several different platforms. And then you have all the various APIs that everything talks to. So I've got like PHP files that serve up some stuff for some products. I have C# code in some servers that are like the oldest stuff, like the HUD primarily talks to, and all the newer stuff is built with like C# services that are using a RESTful API. So it's evolved over time, and it is just massively complicated. And I always have to be careful. If I pull on this thread here, I'm going to unravel something over there, and it's a challenge.
Constant hours in Notepad you've had to go through.
Oh yeah.
So how did you come up with the concept of the Behind the Fang podcast, as like compared to the very first podcast you started? Like, how do you feel about the current ones now as well?
Well, you guys have obviously expanded and ran with it. I think I mentioned at the beginning of this. When I started it, I wanted to do an interview with a different, interesting personality behind the scenes, once a week. And I think I got 2 or 3. And then we did like a live role play session at my house one time when I had a few of the community members over playing. I forget what we were playing, Dungeons and Dragons or something. But anyway, I started the idea because I wanted to, 1, get into podcasting, and 2, give the community more insight. I ever since the beginning of this thing, I've had very little time to socialize. I constantly get invited to a birthday party or a wedding or, just come and hang out stuff. And when I'm in world, I'm really desperately trying to get more stuff done and more stuff fixed. So I don't have time to chitty chat and hang around as much as I'd like to. So I kind of thought it would be a neat way to, 1, let people get to know me a little better, but also to help clear up some misunderstandings. In some cases, we had at the time, some arch vampires that were really hated that I thought were pretty nice people from, my interactions with them. And I thought by like bringing some of these arch vampires and clan leaders on and having, just candid discussions about, okay, who are you really versus who is your character in the game?
Yeah.
How are the two different? And maybe kind of open the door for some more peaceful behind the scenes sort of interaction. And that was really what it was all about.
Makes sense, yeah.
I really like that, actually, because using myself as an example, as a lot of people in my earlier days did not have a very nice opinion, and now that I have started to interact, on the podcast and whatnot, it has helped, and I've had a lot of people reach out and just say, "Oh, okay, well, you're not the bad guy I thought you were."
Yep, it's a lot of times people can pick up impressions based on hearsay and based on something that might have been misinterpreted, or even based on the fact that, oh, my particular character is a dick, but I'm not. Until recently, I was playing as a character in a Monster of the Week role-play game. And my character in that game was a complete douche and a complete dick. And, I'm not, generally speaking. And, it was always kind of funny that, the other characters were having people come up and say, "Hey, how can you stand being around that guy?" It's like, well, actually the player is really, really nice. But, I'm actually playing a character that's not. And in Progeny, it's not always easy to see the real personality behind the player. Somebody might say something really aggressive or obnoxious, and they're doing it for effect for their character within regards to their role play. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they are just a dick. But,
yes.
Sometimes they're not, and no one knows it. And it's really nice to provide a out of character channel as a way to get to know who everybody really is and what everyone's trying to do.
Well, and that explains it all right there, because most of the people are actually really nice, and they're, like you said, they're the dicks everywhere. But generally speaking, a lot of, like, the characters that I've met, even being enemies, are some really good friends of mine. I like how it evolves into your character, for sure.
Right on.
Well, pretty neat.
Can you tell
Okay.
us?
Well,
Ming has a special question for you.
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
okay. So, can you tell us more about the Lycanthropes and Slayers, familiars, and how you would envision that to evolve for the player base?
Well, for one thing, I envision that to be part of the original launch of the system. It's just never gotten done. I understand for the most part how I want them to work, and I've got their components in various stages of completion, but I don't have a functional model for them yet. So here's what I can tell you from my original plan. Slayers exist to hunt lycanthropes and vampires. They're there to protect human and stamp out the underlying threats to the world. Vampires exist to farm humans. They exist to feed on humans and treat them like cattle. Think of them as sort of, cattle or better dairy farmers, right? The vampires are running around, gathering herds of humans. Lycanthropes more or less exist to reduce the food supply. They are creatures of rage, whereas a vampire is an undead, cursed monster. A lycanthrope is an uber alive, uber natural monster. So my original idea for the lycanthropes, regardless of what kind or breed of lycanthrope this character may be, they're all going to work based on a building rage, whereas a vampire has a hunger that consumes part of their life force every night. A lycanthrope will have rage building up, and if they do not release it constructively, they can, wolf out and wipe out any human that's on a sim or a nearby sim to them. And that's kind of the original concept. And I was going to have the rage, or I will have the rage build stronger on a full moon, stronger for pups versus maybe ancient wolves, et cetera, et cetera. I plan to have them divided into breeds, much like vampires or have a bloodline. You'll have a breed, and then you'll have. But beyond that, I haven't got a lot of the mechanics worked out for all of the features that I would like to implement. I do plan for lycanthropes to be mortal versus the vampire being immortal, which means if a lycanthrope gets hurt or they'll regenerate. They're very tough and they're hard to take down. But if you take them down, they will lose a lot of power and have to rebuild it. Conversely, a slayer is truly mortal, which means if a slayer gets killed, they start over. They are effectively the next generation of that slayer's family or something like that.
I love that.
I like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, slayers will have a lot of neat features when we get that far, and the new blood tanks and resting places are a part of the slayer system as well. If a slayer can track you to your lair, even if you're not online and your lair is undefended, they can stake you in your coffin and take you out. So that'll be kind of a neat thing.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that is really
That's
neat.
really neat.
It's a little scary.
Yeah. Well, see, the Slayer concept, and this is something that I forgot about since the very beginning, but it was an original part of the progeny concept, is one, make it easy for vampires to feed. You don't have to ask questions or permission. You can just go bite somebody. But feeding in public should be dangerous. And that danger part never got introduced to the system because I never got around to introducing slayers. The one time a vampire is truly vulnerable to slayers is either when they're sleeping or when they're feeding.
I love that. Craig, with your rage, you should have been a lycanthrop. Maybe you need to think about switching over.
Yeah, I should. I often get asked this question when I do introduce the lycanthrope HUD. Can people change? Yes. I'm not sure there will be an equivalent role in the lycanthropes for every role that exists in vampires, but whatever I can change over, I will. But it will be a one-time thing. So, if you switch to be a lycanthrope, you will not be able to switch back with the same character, short of getting resurrected and then re-embraced, vice versa. So I will make it easy and possible for everyone who is currently a vampire who is since day one wanted to be a lycanthrope, they will be able to change and keep as much of their accrued power as possible. But again, it will not likely be a 1-for-1 because lycanthropes will work differently to how vampires work.
So if you want to switch over, you better be sure then, right?
Yeah, and I'll
Okay.
publish all the rules and features well in advance so people can make, educated decisions about that.
Very generous too. I mean, especially some of our elders that per se already RP as lichens and whatnot. So that's going to be a great thing.
Yep.
So, can you tell us about your patron program and how players can sign up for that? I've heard rumors about a book that you've been working on that we seen in the Discord group. If you want to,
Yep. I think you're kind of putting two of your questions together there. So I'll start with the patron concept. One, I'd like to say, if you can't afford it or you don't want to, don't join the patron. You can join the patron Discord. It's free for everybody to join the patron Discord, and I am in there very frequently. I don't know if it's on a daily basis, but sometimes it is. And I communicate with the group there, and I put out news bulletins on what I'm working on and developments, etc. And it always goes there first because that's on my desktop 24 hours a day. I've always got it. I started the Patreon community, and this is actually the second rendition of that. The first one did not work very well. I think it worked up to where it was generating like $75 a month or something like that, which didn't even really qualify the time I was investing in doing it. Right. So the purpose behind the Patreon campaign is simply this. I am one guy, one developer working to build this system, and I have so many things on my needs to get done list, and I can't devote hundreds of hours a month or a year or what have you, just out of my own pocket. I have other things that my family would rather I be doing or my regular job, etc. So I came up with the idea of the Patreon campaign as a way for people who want to support my development work of progeny, to see more get done, for them to do so without there being anyone forced to do so. I always said progeny will always be free, or at least there'd be a free way to do everything you need to do. And this way, those who want to participate can, and those who don't have to yet. You can still join the community and, hear what's going on and chit chat. For those who do join, there's various tiers depending on what level of support they put in. There's member only channels that I participate into. It gives them a better level of access to me for like reporting issues and problems, or they maybe have a ticket that's been hanging in the ticket queue for a month. If a Patreon comes to me and says, hey, I have this issue, I asked to have my sex changed 3 weeks ago, it's not been done. They get my attention much faster. I do tickets and things like that when I have time to. So otherwise, it may be a while, right? So and this is not a ploy to try to get people to be a patron. I appreciate my patrons is kind of what I'm getting at. I don't willfully ignore anyone. But those who are putting the money in are doing so to the benefit of the entire system by allowing me to have more time that I can justify putting into the system. And I have actually gotten a lot done since I started this thing, because I can now justify to my wife, to my life, that,
yes.
Hey, I can, spend 8, 10, or 15 hours or even 20 hours a week devoted to this when I otherwise should be out, playing golf with my kid or something. It's I think it's important. I would like to see progeny become my full-time job. replacing my, regular 9 to 5. And I never thought it was actually possible, but we are actually getting to a point where there is enough support in the Patreon that, I mean, it's still down the tunnel, but I can see the light. I mean, it's literally possible if I can get more incentives and more people willing to join. And if that day ever comes, then we will see all of these things that I have been wanting to get done for so long actually done, because my best programming time is my 9 to 5, and most of my brain power is getting eaten by my day job, which is also programming. So when 5 o'clock hits, and I spend the next 3, 4, or 5 hours on progeny, I'm not at my best. You know what I mean? I'm like,
definitely
not at my most efficient.
Really hard. Yeah.
So if I were actually doing this as my day job, and the salary is not, I'm basically not taking food out of my kids' mouths, that would be fantastic. And I think that may actually be possible. So, I'm still plugging away at it. So if somebody wants to join, just go to Patreon and search the Cult of Lachiel, or search me up in World. I think there's a link to it in my profile.
And we'll actually get, when we're published, we'll get a link put underneath the video, definitely.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can send you a link. Oh, and the general benefits are, one, depending on which level you're at, you become a primary beta tester for things that I need beta tested. I generally roll them out starting out at the highest levels down to the lowest levels, just depending on how many testers I need for whatever it is. Sometimes things go in phases where I might have the cardinals and the archbishops test something. Sometimes I like have them test, and then I have everyone else test, etc. They also get, they get a role within the community that lets them into private things. Mm-hmm. I do give some age bonuses, but I am trying to phase that out. But then again, I've been saying that for 6 months or more. I just have not had the time to come up with a better incentive system that everyone likes. But I'm working on it. So I am dumping way too much age into the system right now. So I do need to tone it out. But I think what I will probably be doing is making age be an incentive if you're a lower age, like maybe up to, I don't know, like ancient or something, and then have that age bonus taper down. So younger players can age up to a respectable age quicker. Older players can't just, skyrocket. Exactly. So I'm going to work it out to where it's fair and where it makes sense, and hopefully it's valuable to everybody. I've got some ideas for some source potions or source ichor potions or something that can give different kinds of benefits, like maybe invulnerability for 24 hours, or be able to deal massive amounts of damage for 24 hours, things like that. So I'm working on.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
That is super exciting. The last one that went out, I think it was Lord Babu that won that.
Oh yeah, the source
icon. Action. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? That reminds me. I promised that the next one I did would not be an auction, but it would be a lottery. Ooh. And then I've just never done another one. Maybe I should do that now. Yeah, that way it's because
that'd be so cool.
Yeah, the couple of times I've done a source ichor, it's always been a reverse auction to where basically the highest bidder got it. And I was always shocked at how much those went for. And I felt a little guilty. That's why I've only done a few of them. But, somebody brought it to my attention. There's a lot of really good people in our system that can't afford that. But everybody can afford maybe 100 lindens or 500 lindens for a even chance. You know what I mean? At a lottery ticket or a raffle, I guess is what
it would be. A great idea, actually.
So I will I'll try to look at doing that for Halloween. That would be kind of cool.
That would be so amazing. If I win it, I'm going to go straight to Voice Island and take out everyone. Wouldn't that be a scene, huh? Oh. That's so amazing. Craig, look out.
Oh, well.
That's cool. I look forward to it. Oh, and your book. Please tell us about your book,
Oh yeah,
too.
that was your next question. System development. Well, there's a lot going on, really. The book is an effort to fix a bunch of broken features in the old clan books. I made those years ago, and Linden's scripting language has changed a lot. Some of those features have broken. So I came up with the idea to use what I call the AMS, the Advanced Menu System, which I invented for the Resire device to create an end world that pops up a web-based menuing system that lets you do some advanced construction. And the first of these books is the Clans book. It does everything the old Clans book was supposed to do, including, creating new houses, promoting a house for consideration to be a clan. It allows you to change your officers. It allows you to create new titles. So your clan will no longer be limited to just sovereign, co-sovereign, ambassador, and proxy. You can have internal clan officers such as knight or prince or princess or grand poobah, whatever you want. And then you can apply these different titles to all of your members as you like. And then one of the features of the vampire book will be, of all your available titles, you can choose which one actually displays in your scan. So if you happen to be a clan sovereign and a house princeps and a knight, you may have all three of those as available to be displayed, and maybe a cambion. You can display which one is appropriate at any given time. And eventually I'll move that into the HUD so you can make those selections. Once I get the clans book done, which will hopefully be early this week to late this week. I had wanted to finish it over the weekend, but I had a little quick impromptu trip to Florida with my son, so I didn't have any development time over this past weekend. What else? Working on the blood tanks, which is a resting place with a blood tank attached. So you can be logged out of the system and you will not lose blood. The blood will be taken out of the blood tank instead of your body. And as long as you have someone tending that, you will continue to age. So it'll be kind of a replacement for hibernation, but also kind of offset the loss to subsistence that a lot of people had earlier. You'll now be able to fill that sucker up to maybe 25 liters and not have to feed again for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The Reliquary is still 90% done. The recharge feature on it is still not quite, let's say, unbuggy. So when I can manage to squash those last couple bugs, I'll be able to release that too. And I guess the last active thing I have in my lab at the moment is the notification obelisk, which should send messages to you if you're, say, an orphan or have an open resire right waiting for you to join or reject, things like that. So I'm trying to get that working so people know when they're an orphan and they only have so many nights left before dusting, things like that.
Oh, that would be great. That's a very common problem. It's, amazing.
Especially because I always tell my kids, leave your HUD on.
That's all I can think of off the top of my head. I know I'm probably forgetting 1,000 other things that I'm working on, but those are the major ones I'm trying to get done fast.
That sounds like a lot. This is very exciting development, so we look forward to it.
Please tell us on how you first became enchanted with like creatures of the night or the darkness, for example, and like what most was it the RP that drew you mostly to the vampire, we'll say, lifestyle?
No. It's long before that. I'm not sure where I originally became interested in vampires, but it was in my early childhood. I've always liked vampire stories and vampire movies. I remember seeing some of the some early. I don't even remember what the movies were called, but I kind of remember one where Dracula had like some really pretty ghostly bride, and then he ended up getting turned into dust. And, I can only remember bits and snatches from some of those early things that were really inspiring to me. And I think what really got me into vampires and vampire role play was a movie called My Best Friend is a Vampire that came out in the 80s sometime. And Vamp with Grace Jones was a really cool movie. I love that one. And the best one of all was the original Fright Night. Love that movie. That was so good. I'm probably forgetting dozens of others, but yeah. And then around college, I got into reading Anne Rice and loved her stuff. And funny story. I remember when I was probably 13 or 14, I would visit my aunt's house in Maryland every summer with my sisters and my family. And I remember finding one of my uncle's Playboys in the bedroom in the basement. And I remember there was a pictorial in that Playboy that was a vampire and these two girls. And it was really titillating to my young mind at that time. And then years later, I remembered that. And I found that magazine, and the actual article that went along with the pictures was written by Anne Rice.
Wow.
And I think that was in like the 25th anniversary of Playboy or something like that. So it's been with me ever since. And then when Vampire the Masquerade came out, the very first version of it, the non-LARP version, I played that. And then I got involved in a LARP version in Cincinnati that was going on in the goth clubs at the time. And I really enjoyed that. I'd say vampires are probably, back when I played Fantasy Hero, which was another tabletop role-playing system that was based on Champions, which was a superhero role-playing system. This was a point-buy system where you build your character with a number of points, and you get more points by taking certain disadvantages, etc. And I built a vampire player character in that game that was probably the coolest character I ever made in any of my other role-playing experiences. So, yeah, I've been into Creatures of Darkness and vampires for as long as I can remember. But they're not the only thing I like. I also like sci-fi. I like, fantasy hero, monsters, ghosts, any of this stuff. Yeah.
Do you like Star Wars?
I far prefer Star Trek to Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry all you Star Wars fans out there. I loved Star Wars when I was a kid. I had all of the action figures and everything, but once I got to be a teenager and beyond, I was firmly in the Star Trek camp. I think it was the prequel series that just ruined it for me. Jar Jar Binks killed Star Wars for me.
Yeah,
I agree.
Definitely.
I actually agree with you 100%. I think the original 6 were far better.
Yeah. The first 3 were really good. The second one actually probably being the best of the 3. But then the middle 3 were just like, I don't know. They were action adventure. It's like the new Star Trek stuff. Really pretty, really brilliant, but it doesn't know what Star Trek is. It's all, they throw the rule book out the window, and I have trouble getting into it anymore.
I agree. It's like most of the things nowadays that get a little bit, like, for example, John Wick, you can see things starting to get more and more commercial.
Yep.
As it goes from the very beginning.
Formula.
Yeah, and it's like you said, the rule books go out the window because the sponsors are in.
Yep. So, I hope that answers your question. So, what do I like most about vampires? Probably depending on the mythology involved, was originally that they're sexy. Obviously they have charm and charisma, and they live forever, and they, all that sort of thing. In my later years, after becoming sort of a full-fledged adult, I think it's more about their power and their manipulation and their ability to drive history for centuries at a time, that sort of thing. So my love for them has slowly changed over the years.
Definitely, you find yourself always, like, being attracted at first by the physical beauty, and then once you get older, I see how it just changes your whole aspect.
Power. Yeah, everyone likes power. Amazing creatures.
Yeah, and of course, if they were real, would you want to be one? And I guess that depends on what kind of vampire we're talking about. So I don't know if I would want to be say a black court vampire from the Harry Dresden novels, but I wouldn't mind being a red court or a white court vampire. They seem pretty cool. So yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So to wrap this up, I got one last awesome question for you. You said you are an Anne Rice fan.
Sure.
My question would be, who did you find more appealing, Louis or Lestat?
Louis, absolutely. Although, you know what?
See, Craig.
Louis was a whiny bitch.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but I liked his style more than the flamboyant, Lestat. I probably liked Armand the best. Not the Antonio Banderas version, but the actual book where he's like sort of an ancient kid kind of thing. I thought he was really, really cool. I think I was more in the Louis camp than the Lestat camp. And when I was that age, I was very skinny and I had long black hair all the way down to my waist. I kind of looked like Louis. So, I sort of identified more with Louis than with Lestat.
That's incredible.
But of Anne Rice's creatures, by far my two favorite characters out of all the books of hers that I have read, and I have not read them all, was Lasher in the first Witching Hours, the Witching Hour, the first Mayfair Chronicles. I didn't like him after he got flesh. Didn't feel like he was Lasher anymore. But I liked the original Lasher spirit. He was very cool. And I liked Aaron Leitner, the investigator from the Talamasca. Love those two concepts. Vampires, it's definitely Louis and Armand were probably my favorites. Claudia was cool, but only because she was spooky as hell.
Oh.
Yeah, she's creepy.
And the actor they played to portray her, they couldn't have done better, that I must say.
Yeah. Who grew up to be Spider-Man's girlfriend.
All the dead bodies. Yeah.
She got to be Claudia and Spider-Man's girlfriend,
Lucky girl.
I must say, it has been a real honor to have you here on your Behind the Fang podcast. I want to say thank you so much as well for creating this awesome system that we all love.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for
We're
playing.
so honored. So honored that you can come here today and do this interview. I know the community, it's going to be a Halloween special. So this is really going to be trick or treat for them. They're going to love it. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun talking to you guys. And if you ever want me back on, let me know.
Oh, we would love that. Oh, yes. If when you get some new stuff done that you'd like to come back on and tell the community about, we would be so honored.
All right, guys. Everybody, happy Halloween.
Her hips move, and I can feel what they're saying, swaying. They say the beast inside of me is gonna get you.